Hello, in this video I'm going to go over a Werewolf Tank build that I have come up with. I'm going to go through quite a bit of stuff here, but I'm going to go over how I like to use this and what it's good for. So I am calling this build the Alpha, and I will go over the statistics here to start off with. As you can see, I have 64 points into health. I highly recommend that as a Werewolf Tank. It's really important to keep your health bar up as high as you can. A lot of this stuff scales off of your max health, so I would recommend trying to get that up there. A couple of things. Werewolf is a little different, so you really have to pay attention to what you are implementing on the build to make sure that you do and can take advantage of what you are slotting or implementing on your builds, because there's quite a few things that don't function as they do on a normal tank setup. So I will get into that a little bit when we get to those points of interest. So the Mundus that I'm using is the Lady, and that is to ensure and help get to the resistance cap. The Werewolf has major resolve in the toolkit, but there is no minor resolve, and you're kind of left with trying to get resistance from your armor, and so it's really helpful to just use the Lady to get you up close to the resistance cap. I am currently on my add pulls build, so I will cover the statistics for that, or the boss build when I get to that. But this is the add pulls setup. As you can see here, I'm using the following food. I have the sticky pork sticky pork and radish noodles. That gives you 5,395 max health and 4,936 maximum stamina for an hour and a half. And then I have a standard tri potion that gives you health, magicka, and stamina, as well as major fortitude, major intellect, and major endurance. So those are the two foods and potions I use. So now I will talk about the werewolf skills themselves. I am using Feral Carnage. This is the activation for the Rush of Agony set for the add pulls. So this is a really important morph to use here. This gives you stamina back as well as giving you fury generation. Then we have Rip and Tear. This becomes your taunt on the build while you are using the Deafening Roar morph. If you read the tooltip on the Deafening Roar morph, the very bottom one there, the very bottom paragraph rather, selecting this morph causes your Nash to taunt enemies if you cast it while bracing. So that is a very important thing for werewolf tanking. If you want to be able to taunt with the skills, you have to use this morph, and then you also have to hold the block button while you activate this skill in order to taunt. So that's something you really have to pay attention to. That's a little bit of a different mechanic than just a standard tanking where you just hit a taunt and it works. You have to actually hold block while you hit this. So just keep that in mind. Rip and Tear will apply physical damage and bleed, and then it also can heal you. And that is a very effective way of being able to keep your tank alive. If you keep taunting and applying this to enemies, you're going to get a pretty decent heal from this. And this also consumes stacks of Blood Hunger to increase the initial damage and the healing done. So you can also get some increased healing from using that. The Deafening Roar, rather than giving you a buff, it applies Major Cowardice and Major Maim to enemies in an AoE of 10 meters, and that applies for 15 seconds, so that is a massive buff. And it sets them off balance as well. Then it will also provide your group a Feeding Frenzy synergy that will increase their damage done by 6% and give them minor force for 30 seconds. This portion of the skill is exactly the same regardless of which morph you have. The other morph will give your group major courage, while this one debuffs the enemies, and this will also turn your Rip and Tear into a taunt, which is why you have to use this on a werewolf tank so you can have a taunt. Very important to remember that. Then it also gives you major evasion and minor protection while this morph is on your bar. Next up, Hircine's Fortitude. This is your burst heal on the build. This will also restore a massive amount of stamina for you. This is a really important thing to understand and when to use this. This also gives you major brutality and sorcery and major vitality in this form just for having it slotted, and that is a true passive for all three of those buffs. But for the stamina regen as well as the heal, I'll just go ahead and drain my stamina here. We'll get it down as much as we can. The one problem with the werewolf skills is that the skills don't cost a whole lot, so it takes a bit to drain down the stamina on a werewolf. So as you can see, I'm getting the stamina down here. All right, so now it is pretty much down to nothing. And as you can see, I'm holding block and my stamina is not regenerating because that is how you shut off your block. So the Fortitude, if you hit it, it will regenerate your stamina and give you a burst heal. So this is what you want to use if you're running out of stamina as a werewolf tank. You need to hit that Fortitude skill. Now, this is the only skill on your bar that costs magicka. However, I will recommend that you try and formulate your build like I have here. I'm still using my traditional infused magicka reduction costs so that I can take advantage of lowering this down as much as possible. Why I'm doing that is because these other skills virtually cost nothing anyway. And if we pop the ultimate, these cost nothing anyway already. So that's really important to keep in mind. This right here, if we can get this down, it's really a lot easier to stay alive and keep your stamina up. And so the stamina bar on here is not real huge. It's 17,000, which is decent, but being able to cast that 3-4 times before it runs out and be able to get all that healing and all the stamina back is really nice to have. As you can see, I can cast it quite a few times before running out. And so I would recommend that you use this setup as well as the infused magicka reduction to get this down to a decent number here, because if this costs the normal amount, then this is really going to be difficult to manage unless you stack into magicka a little bit. The last skill on the bar is Blood Claws. This does AoE damage in a cone. It hits 6 enemies. It does physical damage and then bleed damage over time. And then it will also heal you for the amount that it hits for the initial hit. And then that is based off your maximum health. So the higher your health, the better the heal is going to be. And then also the initial hit grants stacks of blood hunger per enemy hit, and then you have a chance to apply Sundered and Hemorrhage as well. So very, very nice skill to use for ad pulls because it hits up to 6 enemies, so you can really apply that and get a good heal as well. And then, of course, for the ultimate, we're using Pack Leader. This gives us major protection and 15% increased block mitigation. And then also it will grant your group minor courage. Then you can also take advantage of the stamina recovery while it's slotted. The ultimate for this is a little different. It generates 4,000 health recovery, and then when you have 1,000, the abilities become enduring. The ability comes enduring rampage, and it gives you the 4,000 health recovery. So that is the skills. So I'm going to cover really quickly here. Like I said, you have to use this to have a bracing taunt with the rip and tear. So this other morph is the only one that grants you a timed major and minor skill. And so I'm going to cover gear sets a little bit that I tried to use in werewolf form that just didn't work. And one of those was Crimson Oath Rive. You could still activate this set with a potion, or also if you had a skill that, like if you use the other morph, but then you're going to have to use something to taunt, and that's the problem. So that's one of the reasons I don't have that on. I also tried out the Lair of Marsalok set Dragon's Defilement, because this will apply minor breach in an AoE. Minor breach is not present on the werewolf's toolkit, only major breach is. However, the werewolf procs Sundered an awful lot, and Sundered will apply minor breach. If you look at the status effect, the Sundered status effect also applies minor breach and gives you 100 weapon and spell damage for 4 seconds. So it ended up not being worth eating up a 5-piece set to get that minor breach in there. I thought that Sundered was present enough to just ditch it all together. So that's what I have set up for the skills. So now I'm going to talk about the ad pulls setup. I'm going to highly recommend that you use Rush of Agony, because this is really helpful for pulling in ads into clusters. And then once you hit that Rush of Agony set like this, you can hit the stun, and it just kind of holds everything in place while you taunt it and debuff it. And if you've got a good team with you, they can usually probably melt them down before they get all spread out again. Or you can kind of just circle them and keep them all clustered up once you get them pulled in that way. But I have a defending front bar sword with a hardening glyph, and then a reinforced Rush of Agony shield with a triglyph on it. I just have Rush of Agony on both bars, so that regardless of what bar I have, it's active. Then for ad pulls, I highly recommend Swarm Mother. This is a really great set to use, because this can give you another chain in as well as another taunt. If this set activates on something, it will also taunt it for 15 seconds if it has already not been taunted. So that's a really helpful one to use. I have this in medium triglyph divines, and then I have the shoulder medium divines triglyph. I didn't want to have specific werewolf tanking gear, so I tried to build this stuff in gear set and traits that I could use on a standard tank build anyway. So I think this really works well. I've tried it out, and it functions really nicely. So the trial set I'm using, I have 2 of them. The Perfected Lucent Echoes, this will give your team 11% critical damage if that is needed. If you're looking to go a little bit more defensive, I recommend going with the Pearlescent Ward setup. So if anybody dies, you're going to get tankier, but it also gives you 180 weapon and spell damage while everybody's alive. So that is a really helpful swap out. So just really quickly before I move on to the other gear sets, I have my Trials gear set up on the jewelry pieces. So all 3 infused Magicka reduction glyphs there for either trial set, and then I have the trial set on the legs and the chest. And that just makes it nice and easy to understand where the gear sets are. So I have 3 pieces of jewelry, the legs, and the chest. And then the other setups I fill in on the waist, gloves, and feet, and then the weapons. And so the monster set is always where it's supposed to be, the medium divines here. The only reinforced piece I have is the chest piece. All other pieces are divines. except for the waist and gloves are Nern honed. And that was to, pardon me, the feet on, I should probably just go one piece by. So Divine's Medium Swarm Mother with Triglyph, Reinforced Lucent Echoes Heavy with a Triglyph, Medium Swarm Mother Divines, a Nern honed Rushing Agony belt. The reason I did well Nern honed is because it has more armor than Reinforced in this weight. Then I have Nern honed Bracers of Rush of Agony with a Triglyph, and then Divine's Lucent Echoes Greaves, and then Reinforced Rush of Agony boots. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm trying to get up to the resistance cap as much as possible, and so that I can just have the resistances really closely. As you can see, not quite to the cap, but real close. So the block mitigation, we'll cover that real quick while we're in here, is at 83%, which is really good. And then the block cost is 1366 for the ad pulls. And so for just to give you an ad pulls rotation, you're going to want to leap in to activate the Rush of Agony set and then stun everybody. And then you're probably going to want to start taunting. So you have to brace and hit the rip and tear on the individual guys. And so that's really what you need to do there to get that to work. And then hopefully your team is going to kind of melt down the big guy in the room first and then work your way down there from that. But that's the gear pieces for the ad pulls. I'll go ahead and cover the CP for the ad pulls. The green tree doesn't really matter, but I have War Mount, Gifted Rider, Master Gatherer, and then I have Steed's Blessing slotted there. For the ad pulls section, I have Rivening Blows to provide some healing every time you do direct damage. This is going to heal you. There's quite a bit of direct damage on the build, so this is going to activate quite a bit. Then from there, I've got Ironclad and Duelist Rebuff. That's going to take care of direct single target damage to you by 12% collectively. And then I have Bulwark. This is going to help you get to the resistance cap, and this does trigger in werewolf form. I have tested this. Bulwark does help. So if you've got a sword and board or an ice staff equipped, you can do that. So that's the 4 slottables I have for ad pulls. And then for the red tree, I have Boundless Vitality, Fortified, and then I have Strategic Reserve. Traditionally, you pretty much got a lot of ultimate in werewolf form because you're constantly eating corpses, or you're keeping it up with other methods as well. And then I have Bracing Anchor. You're going to be bracing a lot to get taunt going, so I may as well put that on and get the benefit of that. If you're finding you're in easier content and you don't need the Bracing Anchor, you could probably put Celerity on for more movement speed instead of that. But I highly recommend using Strategic Reserve. This, along with some of the other stuff implemented on the build, is just really going to help you keep alive. Having this be a heal, this be a heal, and this be a heal, along with the Strategic Reserve, is really going to help stay alive quite a bit. There's going to be a lot of healing involved here. It's going to help you quite a bit. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of heals here to work with, and it should help quite a bit. So let's go into the Wizard's Wardrobe. I recommend using this for dungeons especially. I'm not so sure about using this build in a trial because the limit of chain in and all that. But as you can see from the setup here, I've got everything here saved on for the ad pulls. So now we'll just go over to the boss build and we'll take a look at that and we'll give that a look-see. So just to cover the character screen, still 64 points into health. Obviously, that doesn't change with the Lady Mundus. However, as you can see, the maximum stats are a lot different. I've got 48,394 max health for boss fights with a max stamina line of 26,252. and then we are sitting at 32,646 for the resistance cap here. So I've taken off the bulwark on this. You could probably pop it in there if you wanted to be a little bit over cap. But what I've done is I've increased the deadly aim damage here. This will also increase the Rivening blows that you get. If you wanted to, you could pop this on over the top of deadly aim. And then you're going to be up and over the resistance cap if you do that. First off, you got to save it when you go into the... Okay, so we'll go into the gear here. That'll be easier. So I have a defending, turning tide, hardened glyph sword, and then a reinforced triglyph. And then again, turning tide back bar. Tremorscale. This is really important for boss fights. This is going to help you get the resistance down for your enemies quite a bit, especially if you've got your resistance up. This is going to rip about 2,600 armor off. You don't have minor breach per se in a skill. You can proc Sundered and get a hold of it that way. But this is one of the hardest things to deal with Werewolf, is getting the resistances down, because you don't have the ability to run certain things like a back bar infused crusher. It just doesn't work on a werewolf, so you're kind of limited to how much you can strip armor. I don't have it changed out. I don't change the trials gear setups at all, so those are different. Those are not different. Head and shoulders are the same medium triglyph, but I have Tremorscale for boss fights instead of Swarm Mother. And then I have Turning Tide in Divines, because it's a heavy set. I don't need to use the reinforced or nerned. So Divines, Turning Tide on the shoes, the hands, and the waist. And then, as I showed before, the trials gear is in the jewelry there. But you can definitely move this to take advantage of bulwark if you want to. Now it's not changing that. It was different before, but so let's go into the other CPs. For boss fights, I would seriously recommend using Bracing Anchor to keep your block mitigation up. I highly recommend that. Pretty much the only thing I change, that's the difference right there. The fortified armor is not. Okay. I just discovered my issue. There we go. Now you can see I'm over the resistance cap if you want to do that. So that's a fluctuation thing you could do if you wanted to put bulwark on instead of fortified. You could maybe swap that out and then use something else in the red tree. But I think either way is effective. Just depends on what you want to do there. But if you've got either fortified or bulwark, as you can see, you're up to 34,000 there. So I still have the same food, but the only gear set change is the dungeon set. I'm using Turning Tide instead of Rush of Agony. And then I have Tremorscale instead of Swarm Mother. So that's essentially the different setup there. And I really recommend using the Wizard's Wardrobe to automatically change this out for you. It's really helpful. Give it a try. I think it'll really help you out. If you've not used this before, I will link my add-ons playlist in the description so that you can give that a try and see what you think. But I wanted to do a video on werewolf tanking because it's a little bit different than a traditional tank. I should probably cover my skill lines here. I have Earthen Heart from the Dragon Knight. I am a Dragon Knight base on this. Um, a lot of this stuff does not take effect when you're in werewolf form. You do get the armor here from the Heart of Stone, and Landslide is effective. But something like this, where you have to have a skill slotted in order to gain the benefit from, when you're in werewolf form, you only have the benefit of these skills being slotted. And so this does not matter anymore. The Mountain Giant does not take effect while you're in werewolf form. So you have to pay attention to what passives say. If they are requiring having a skill slotted, then they will not work. So the other skill lines I have, Daedric Summoning slotted to get the reduced ultimate from the Power Stone passive. And they also have some passives that are nice. You'll get maximum health because the direwolves are out. That does function properly. And then I just have this here purchased in case I pop out a werewolf. You're still going to get the benefit of Bound Aegis. If you happen to pop out a werewolf, I would suggest setting up your skills, being ready for that. But it's really not that difficult to stay in werewolf form. And then finally, I have Winter's Embrace here. This will increase the ability to proc chilled. Really, the only way you're going to be able to do that on here is if you have a frost glyph. There's no frost damage on a werewolf build, so if you want to try and pop chilled on the build, then you would have to put a frost glyph on your weapon, and that by chance might help you get some resistances down. If you happen to wield an ice staff, but then again, you don't have an ice staff in your hand, so I'm not so sure how much this would proc minor breach or anything like that. So, or excuse me, minor brittle. Then this doesn't have effect, as you can see. Frozen armor does not take effect while you're in werewolf form, but I have it slotted here in case I pop out. And then also this Icy Aura also does not take effect when you're in werewolf form, but Piercing Cold does. So you have 8% more block mitigation, which is nice to have. And that's why I chose Winter's Embrace purely basically for the block mitigation, to give me some more block mitigation there. Templar does have some block mitigation, but you have to be a pure class Templar in order to proc that. Because there's no way to get Sacred Ground in werewolf form other than being in a pure class Templar. And so that was really the only block mitigation that I could see that was available to be able to take advantage of in werewolf form. So just make sure you've got all your regular passives filled in that you normally do. Your Undaunteds, your continuous attack. I am an Imperial race on this, if that matters to anybody. It's a really nice tanking race because you get maximum health, maximum stamina, and it reduces the cost of all your skills, including your ultimate. So not only am I getting that 15% reduction in ultimate from the Sorcerer's Daedric Summoning, I'm also getting the red diamond passive as well. So that is the boss build, but I'm going to talk about the essentially the werewolf teams. You're going to get major courage from your DPS if they are werewolves, and then so there's just a couple of things you need to focus on as a group, and that's penetration, and then making sure that your critical damage is handled. So you want to do some testing in terms of what you're going to be on for DPS with this build. I would highly recommend going with a pure class Nightblade to get as much critical damage as you can, taking advantage of the above and beyond pure class mastery there. That'll help getting close and mimicking numbers that you can get on a trial dummy. But there's just not a lot of easy ways to tank with a werewolf, you're basically working with single target taunts and single target chain ins if you use the Swarm Mother, and then the Tremorscale is pretty close to a single target because the circle is really small on that. So if you're interested in a werewolf tank, this is kind of a good way to do it in dungeons. Give it a try, see what you think. If you thought this was helpful or interesting, please consider liking my video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in another video. Bye.